The restaurant buzzed with warmth and music, the low hum of conversation weaving between the clink of cutlery and the scent of jollof rice that floated from the kitchen. Kwame Mensah stepped through the heavy wooden doors, his tailored suit doing little to ease the knot of unease in his chest. He wasn't here for the food. He wasn't here for the company. He was here because tonight was supposed to be just another night, until it wasn't. His table was in the back corner, shielded by a tall potted plant and the low glow of a single lamp. He'd chosen it because it gave him a view of the room, a habit he'd picked up long ago. Control the space, see everyone, know who was watching you. He was scanning the crowd when he saw her. She was perched at the bar, her skin glowing like polished bronze under the amber lights. A halo of natural corals framed her face, and when she laughed, he felt it in his gut. A soft, rich sound that didn't belong to him, but somehow still tugged at something deep inside. For a heartbeat, she was just another beautiful woman in the city's endless parade of beautiful women. Then she lifted her hand to tuck a curl behind her ear, and the gold band on her finger caught the light. Kwame's breath caught. A simple, unadorned wedding ring, one he had last seen resting on his wife's cold hand the day they lowered her casket into the earth. His heart slammed against his ribs, and he forced himself to breathe. He blinked, hoping it was a trick of the light, some cheap imitation or an unlucky coincidence. But when he looked again, the ring was still there, his dead wife's ring, on the hand of a stranger. The noise of the restaurant seemed to dull around him. Laughter blurred into static. He felt the weight of the years he'd spent burying the past, years he'd thought he was done with. But the past wasn't done with him. He moved closer, each step measured, careful not to draw attention. She was laughing with the bartender, oblivious to the storm brewing in his chest. Every detail of that ring was burned into his memory. The tiny scratch near the band's edge, the worn smoothness from years of love and loss. It was hers. He would have bet his soul on it. For a moment, he stood frozen, torn between the urge to demand answers and the fear of what those answers might be. Who was she? How did she have it? And what did it mean for the life he'd spent so long trying to rebuild? The woman turned slightly, and he saw her face more clearly. Dark eyes, full lips, a quiet confidence in the tilt of her chin. She looked nothing like his wife. But the ring, it was impossible to ignore. Kwame took a slow breath, his pulse a steady drumbeat in his ears. He had to know, he had to understand. He approached the bar, his steps silent on the polished wood floor. The woman's laughter faded as she noticed him, a flicker of curiosity in her dark eyes. She straightened, her fingers curling around her glass like she needed something to hold on to. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm, even though he felt anything but. She blinked, surprised by his sudden presence. "Yes." He nodded toward the ring, his gaze steady. "That ring. Where did you get it?" She looked down, her brows drawing together in confusion. "This," she said, lifting her hand. "It was a gift." "Why?" "A gift." His stomach tightened. From who? From where? For a moment, he couldn't speak. The woman shifted, a hint of unease in the way she held herself. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice soft but wary. Kwame swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "It belonged to someone I knew, someone who's gone." He paused, searching her face for any sign that she knew what this meant. But her eyes were clear, open, unguarded. She didn't know. He exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I didn't mean to startle you." She offered a small, hesitant smile. "It's okay. Just strange, I guess." He nodded once, stepping back. But his mind was anything but calm, because that ring was a ghost, and he needed to know how it found its way here, tonight, on the hand of a stranger. As he walked back to his table, the laughter and music of the restaurant rose around him again. But inside, everything was quiet. Everything was waiting. Because the past wasn't gone. It was right here, wrapped in gold on a stranger's hand. And Kwame knew he wouldn't rest until he found out why. Kwame sat at his table, but his mind was anywhere but on the conversation unfolding around him. The ring was all he could see, a ghost glinting on the hand of a woman he didn't know. He forced himself to breathe, to smile politely at the colleague droning on about mergers and profits. But every time he blinked, he saw her, her dark skin, her quiet laugh, the easy grace of her movements. And the ring. He had buried that ring with his wife. He remembered the weight of it in his hand, the finality of the earth closing over it. It was supposed to be gone, like her, like the part of him he'd buried with her. But here it was, back in his world, as if the past had decided it wasn't done with him yet. He stole another glance at the bar. The woman was still there, sipping her wine and chatting with the bartender. She looked so ordinary. A waitress, maybe, or someone out for a quiet drink after a long day. She didn't look like someone who should be carrying the last piece of a life he'd tried so hard to let go. Who was she? How had she come to have that ring? And what did it mean that it was here, tonight, when it was supposed to be moving forward? Kwame clenched his jaw. He'd built a life on control, on knowing the angles, the power plays, the weaknesses in the room. But this was chaos. And he hated chaos. He pushed back from the table, ignoring the polite questions of his colleague as he excused himself. He needed to know. The woman looked up as he approached, her eyes curious but unguarded. Up close, she was even more striking, a quiet confidence in the way she held herself, a softness in her features that didn't match the ring on her finger. "Hi," she said, her voice warm but unsure. "Can I help you?" Kwame hesitated. He wasn't a man who stumbled over words. But now he was a man staring at a piece of his dead wife's past. "That ring," he said, his voice low. "It belonged to someone I lost, someone I loved." She looked down at her hand, turning it slowly, as if seeing it for the first time. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was a gift from someone I trusted." A gift, Kwame swallowed hard. The idea that someone had taken that ring from his wife's grave, sold it, given it away. It was a betrayal he hadn't been prepared for. "Who?" he asked, his tone gentle but firm. She shook her head, a small crease between her brows. "Huh? I don't know. It came with a box of old things. Antiques, maybe. I didn't think it was important." She didn't know. Or maybe she did. And she was protecting whoever had given it to her. Either way, it was clear. She wasn't part of the betrayal. She was just another thread in the mystery. Kwame forced a smile. "Thank you," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you." "It's okay," she said, offering a small, cautious smile of her own. But her eyes watched him carefully, as if she could feel the weight of what he wasn't saying. He turned and walked back to his table, but his mind was already somewhere else. This wasn't just about a ring. This was about the past clawing its way back to the surface, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. He sat down, his hands coiling into fists under the table. Because if that ring had found its way back into his life, then so had everything he'd buried with it. And this time, he wasn't sure he could walk away. Kwame couldn't let it go. The woman's words played over and over in his mind as he left the restaurant and stepped into the cool night air. A gift, an antique, something she hadn't even thought was important. But he knew better. That ring was everything, a piece of a past he'd buried with his wife. And now it was back, wrapped around the finger of a stranger. The next morning, he found himself standing in front of an antique shop on the edge of the city. One of those places that seem to exist outside of time. The wooden sign above the door read Adinkra Curiosities, and the scent of old wood and spices greeted him as he pushed the door open. Inside, the shop was a maze of artifacts and relics, wooden statues from Ghana, carved masks from Nigeria, ancient textiles that spoke of centuries past. Kwame moved through the narrow aisles, his sharp eyes scanning the shelves until he found the man he was looking for. "Kojo," he said, his voice calm but edged. The shopkeeper looked up, his lined face breaking into a warm smile. Kwame Mensah, what brings you here, my friend? Kwame held up his phone, showing the picture he'd taken the night before. The woman's hand, the ring glinting on her finger. This, he said. It was sold to her. I need to know where it came from. Kojo's smile faded. He took the phone, squinting at the image, his fingers tightening around it. I remember this ring, he said softly. It came in a box of estate items. A woman. She didn't give her name, but she said it was from her late mother's collection. Kwame's jaw clenched. His wife's mother had died years before her. There was no reason for her ring to be in a stranger's estate sale unless someone had stolen it. Who was she? He pressed. Kojo shook his head. She paid in cash, left no record. I'm sorry, Kwame. He took a slow breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Kojo had no reason to lie, but someone had taken that ring from the grave, and that someone was still out there. He left the shop, with the weight of the past heavy on his shoulders. The city was bright with morning light, but to Kwame it felt like every shadow held a secret. The ring was no accident, and he wouldn't rest until he uncovered the truth. That night, he went back to the restaurant. She was there again, the woman with the ring, wiping down tables and chatting with customers, like she had no idea the storm she'd walked into. He waited until the dinner rush was over, then approached her as she stacked plates behind the bar. Can we talk? He asked, his voice low. She looked up, startled, then nodded, gesturing to the small alleyway behind the restaurant. They stepped into the cool night, the air between them charged with things unsaid. You came back, she said softly. Kwame nodded. I need to know the truth, he said. That ring, it belonged to my wife. It was buried with her. How did it end up on your hand? She swallowed, her eyes wide. I told you I don't know. It came in a box of antiques. I never thought. She paused, then met his gaze, her voice steady. I didn't know it was stolen. But now, I believe you. Kwame searched her face. She wasn't lying, but she was part of this, whether she wanted to be or not. Help me, he said quietly. Help me find out where it came from. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'll help you. In that moment, something shifted between them. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was part of the story now, and together, they would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost. Kwame couldn't sleep. He'd stared at the ceiling for hours, the room silent except for the occasional creak of the old walls. The city outside moved on, cars and sirens humming like nothing had happened. But inside him, everything had shifted. He turned his head toward the empty side of the bed, still untouched, still sacred. He hadn't let anyone sleep there since Amma died. Amma. Even the thought of her name made his chest tighten. Her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she used to rest her hand on his heart like she could feel what he wasn't saying. And the ring that was supposed to be with her forever. How the hell did it end up on another woman's hand? He sat up, rubbing his face with both hands. The stranger hadn't lied. He'd studied people his entire life, watched body language, like it was a language only he could read. And she didn't know. She didn't steal it. She didn't even know what she was wearing. That should have made it easier. But it didn't. Because now, the mystery was real. Not a coincidence, not a cruel dream, a truth that lived outside of grief. And it demanded answers. Kwame stood and walked to the window, staring out over the city. The lights flickered in the distance like stars that refused to die. He'd worked hard to build a new life. Quiet, successful, alone. That was the deal. No chaos, no mess, no emotion he couldn't bottle up and label. But now, he was unraveling. Because something had been taken from him, and worse, someone had taken it. He clenched his jaw, trying to suppress the wave of fury rising in his chest. Was it grave robbing? Was it someone from Amma's side of the family? Someone who'd betrayed her memory for money? The possibilities clawed at him, each one uglier than the last. And in the middle of it all, her, the woman with the warm smile and quiet strength, the one who wore his wife's ghost like an accessory. Kwame turned from the window, pacing the room. This wasn't just about a ring. It was about the one thing he thought he had left: peace. He had accepted that Amma was gone. He had accepted that grief would always be part of him, folded into the quiet spaces of his life. But now the past was speaking again, and he couldn't ignore it. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his hands, strong, capable, controlled. But tonight, they shook, because he had no control over this, and he hated that more than anything. He didn't know if he wanted justice or closure or just someone to blame, but he knew he needed to keep digging, because until he understood why that ring had come back, he wouldn't be able to breathe right. Tomorrow, he'd meet her again, ask the questions he didn't ask the first time, push harder. But tonight, he let himself feel it. All of it. The pain, the confusion, the quiet rage that someone had taken what was sacred and turned it into a mystery he didn't ask for. And somewhere deep inside, he felt something else too. Fear. Not of the truth, but of what it would do to him once he found it.
The coffee shop was nearly empty by the time she arrived. Kwame sat at the corner table, his phone face down, his posture rigid. His eyes tracked every sound, every shift of shadow across the room. Then she walked in. The woman with the ring. She wore a simple white blouse, sleeves rolled, and her hair pulled back in a bun. Still poised, still calm, but now her eyes carried something new. Tension, awareness, the weight of questions she hadn't asked until now. "I didn't expect you to reach out," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Kwame nodded. "You said you'd help me. I'm taking you up on that." She placed a small box on the table, worn wood, delicate hinges, and a quiet hum of memory. "I went through the rest of the things that came with the ring," she said. "Found this tucked in the bottom. Thought it might matter." He opened the lid carefully. Inside, old photographs, a faded letter sealed with brittle tape, and a receipt from a storage auction. The name listed? Menta A. Kwame's breath caught. His throat tightened as he picked up the receipt, scanning the date. 3 months after Amma's funeral, a storage locker rented in her name, cleared out by someone else. "How did this end up in an auction?" he murmured. "I don't know," she said softly. "But the lot included your wife's name. That ring must have been part of it." He stared at the paper, fury building low in his chest. His wife never had a storage unit. And if she did, who rented it in her name after her death? He pulled out the letter and peeled open the brittle seal. The handwriting inside was sharp and deliberate. "Amma, I'm sorry. I had no choice. You should have told him. You should have trusted me. It's too late now. I can't protect you anymore." No signature, just those cold, desperate words. Kwame sat back, the room tilting slightly. Someone new, someone close. Someone had kept a secret his wife had taken to her grave. He looked up, his voice low. "Where did this auction happen?" She pointed to the receipt. "Accra, on the edge of town, some private estate company." He nodded slowly, mind racing. This wasn't just about a ring anymore. It was about what Amma had hidden from him, about who knew and why they stayed silent after her death. The woman watched him closely. "What do you think it means?" "I think," he said, folding the letter with care, "my wife had a life I didn't know about, and someone went out of their way to keep it buried." They sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of it settling between them. He finally looked at her. "You didn't have to bring this. You didn't have to help me." She shrugged gently. "Maybe I wanted to know why you looked at me like I was wearing a ghost." Kwame gave a small, bitter smile. "That's exactly what you were wearing." She didn't flinch. "Not anymore." Outside, the sky had begun to shift, clouds gathering in slow, rolling waves. Kwame stared at the photos again. Amma's face, frozen in time, standing next to a man he didn't recognize. The man's arm around her shoulders, a gold ring visible on his hand. He tapped the photo. Do you know who this is? She leaned closer. No, you? Kwame's jaw clenched. Not yet. But he would. Because the past had stopped knocking. It had kicked the door in. Kwame laid the photo flat on his desk, the edges worn soft by time. Ama's smile stared back at him, familiar, haunting. But it wasn't her that held his focus, it was the man beside her, arms slung casually over her shoulder, smile crooked, hand resting just a little too possessively. A man he didn't recognize. A man wearing the same gold ring Amma had once given him. The letter from the box sat beside the photo, the words etched into his mind like a scar. You should have told him. You should have trusted me. I can't protect you anymore. Whatever Amma had hidden, she hadn't done it alone, and whoever had written those words had known he'd come looking eventually. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't about grief anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about truth and justice. Amma had secrets, secrets someone tried to erase. Her ring was never meant to resurface, but it had, and that meant someone had failed to bury everything. Now, it was his turn to dig. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Kwame, a deep voice answered. I need a favor, Kwame said. Discreet, quiet, and fast. By nightfall, he had a name, Elias Kojo Mensah, born in Kumasi, owned several storage properties under false names, no direct connection to Amma, but one account had received payments from an anonymous trust that had been closed weeks after her death. Clean, cold, purposeful. Kwame paced the floor, every step hammering the truth deeper into his chest. Amma had been protecting something, or someone, and Elias Kojo was a piece of that puzzle. He called the woman, the one with the ring. She answered on the second ring. You found something? Yes, Kwame said. I need you to come with me. To where? To meet the man who might have erased my wife's life. The next morning, they stood in front of a quiet, unassuming house on the edge of the city. Modern, gated, no name on the doorbell. But Kwame could feel it. The tension in the air, the scent of something unfinished. The door opened before they knocked. The man who stood there was older than the photo, but his eyes were unmistakable. Dark, sharp, watchful. Kwame Mensah, he said. I was wondering when you'd come. Kwame didn't waste time. You knew my wife. I did, Elias replied. Better than you think. Kwame stepped forward, fury simmering beneath his voice. You forged a storage account. You sold her things like they were nothing. You left a ring meant to stay buried. Elias's face didn't change. She asked me to. Silence. A beat. Then another. What? She made me promise, Elias said, to disappear her past, to protect you from what she couldn't fix. Kwame's hands curled into fists. And what exactly was she protecting me from? Elias didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back inside. Kwame followed. Because he wasn't walking away. Not again. Not without the truth. Whatever came next, answers, lies, fallout, it didn't matter. This was justice, and justice demanded light. The silence in Elias Kojo's living room was thick enough to choke on. Kwame stood in the center of the room, the woman with the ring just behind him, watching warily. Elias had poured himself a drink, neat, careful, like he wasn't standing in the middle of someone else's unraveling life. You said she asked you to protect me, Kwame said, his voice quiet but cutting. From what? Elias took a sip, then met his gaze. Amma was in trouble long before she met you. Kwame's stomach turned. You're lying. No, Elias said calmly. She didn't tell you because she knew you'd try to save her, and that would have gotten you killed. Kwame's jaw clenched. I was her husband. She owed me the truth. Elias's eyes darkened. She loved you enough to lie. Kwame stepped forward, his voice rising. She loved me enough to marry me, to build a life.
And you expect me to believe she had a whole past I didn't know about? I don't expect anything, Elias said. I'm just telling you what she couldn't. He reached into a drawer and tossed a small leather folder onto the table. Inside, photos, letters, a passport with a different name, Amma's face, but a different life. She had been someone else before she became Amma Mensah. Kwame stared down at the folder, the weight of the truth sinking in like stones. She changed her name, Elias said. She was running from people who wanted her dead, from choices she couldn't undo. Kwame looked up, voice strained. What did she do? She didn't kill anyone, if that's what you're asking, Elias said. But she knew things, dangerous things. She helped expose a network, money laundering, dirty politics, arms shipments. She was a whistleblower. Kwame's heart thudded against his ribs. She never told me. She couldn't, Elias said. You think she didn't want to. You were her peace, but peace is fragile. She was trying to protect it. He pointed to the ring in the woman's hand. She asked me to bury the past, to burn it, actually, but I couldn't. I kept a box, just in case. And when I ran out of time, it ended up in that auction. Kwame closed the folder, every breath feeling heavier. So what now? He asked. That depends on you, Elias said. Kwame turned away, his thoughts racing. Amma had lived a second life, a dangerous one, and now that past had bled into his present, through a ring that wasn't supposed to be seen again. The woman stepped forward, voice soft. She was trying to keep you safe. That's not betrayal, that's love, in its hardest form. Kwame looked at her. She was right. All this time, he'd thought Amma left him with a hole he couldn't fill, but maybe what she left behind was something else. A final act of love, one last, impossible choice. He faced Elias again. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Elias nodded. I don't expect you to. Kwame stepped back, his voice steady now. But I'm done running in circles. I'll take the truth, the full truth, and then I'll decide what to do with it. Elias gave a slow nod. You've earned that. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling over the city like smoke. Kwame stepped into the wind, the folder tucked under his arm, the woman beside him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, at least, the lies were over. The folder sat unopened on Kwame's kitchen counter for 3 days. He didn't touch it, not because he wasn't ready for the truth, he already had that, but because the grief was quieter now, and he didn't want to wake it back up. For the first time since Amma's death, the ache in his chest wasn't a weight, it was a space. And maybe, just maybe, it was a space that could hold something new. He texted her, not Amma, the woman with the ring. Her name was Zuri. He hadn't known that until recently, but now it stayed in his head the way a song gets stuck. Quiet, persistent, impossible to forget. Can we talk? Tonight, same place. She arrived early, same quiet confidence, same curious eyes. But something about her felt different, like she wasn't just holding someone else's story anymore. She was part of his now. They sat across from each other again, no ring between them this time. No ghosts, just questions waiting for the right moment. I'm leaving the investigation to the lawyers, Kwame said. Elias's actions weren't illegal, just unspoken. But the trust Amma left behind, it confirmed everything. She had a plan in place. She wanted to disappear clean. Zuri nodded. And now? Kwame looked out the window for a long moment, then back at her. Now I let her go, fully. Finally. Zuri looked down at her hands. And what about us? He raised an eyebrow. Is there an us? I don't know, she said honestly. But I know I stayed in this longer than I had to. I wanted to help you. And I wanted to see where this might go. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. I used to think grief was a wall, something you smash into over and over, hoping it breaks. But I was wrong. She tilted her head. It's a door, he said quietly. You just have to decide when to walk through it. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but full. Zuri's voice was soft when she spoke. And have you? Kwame nodded. I think I just did. He reached across the table and took her hand, not possessive, not desperate, just steady, intentional. Whatever this becomes, he said, I want it to come from truth, not from pain. Zuri smiled. That's the only way I take it. Outside, the city moved on. Horns, lights, life spinning endlessly. But inside that little cafe, time slowed. They didn't need to say everything. Not yet. What mattered had already been said. Kwame had gone looking for answers. He'd found grief, secrets, but he'd also found something he hadn't expected, a future, and this time, he wasn't going to bury it. He was going to choose it. I used to believe closure meant answers, that if I just found the truth, who took the ring, why Amma lied, what was buried in her past, I could finally breathe again. But the truth didn't heal me, not at first. It cut deeper. It made me question everything. Her love, her choices, my own blindness. Then I realized something. Grief isn't a door you lock. It's a room you learn to live in. And if you're lucky, one day, the windows open. Amma kept secrets, big ones, dangerous ones. But she loved me the best way she knew how. She didn't want me tangled in the chaos that shaped her. She wanted to give me peace, even if it meant leaving questions behind. Now, I choose to believe that was love, not betrayal, not abandonment, just a different kind of sacrifice. The ring, her ring, was never just a symbol of what we were. It became the key to what I needed to become. A man who stops holding his breath, a man who stops carrying guilt like armor, a man who lets go so he can reach for what's next. There's no neat ending here. Zuri and I are still figuring things out, but when she smiles, I don't see ghosts anymore. I see light. If you're holding on to something that's already gone, if you're waiting for someone to come back and explain why they broke you, stop. Start writing your own ending. The past isn't coming to rescue you, but you can still rescue yourself. That's what Amma gave me in the end, not answers, a choice. Ah,